Hello. How are you guys doing? It's so good to see you. I can kind of see who's on there. The screen's a little bit small. Hello, Marcia. And Susie, I think I see you as well. Thank you. You know what, Marcia? I just uploaded the link from the YouTube page, the Martha and Mary study that we did last week. Also, if you scroll down either on the church page or on the Shaken and Shinin' page, you'll be able to find that study as well. But I did finally upload that one and got it going. And I opened a new, on the YouTube channel, like if you click on it, I opened a new playlist. It'll be Women of the Bible. So last week was, of course, Martha and Mary, and tonight is the Shunnamite Woman. So I'm super excited about that. I'm going to say it now, and I'll try to remember to say at the end. We will not have a study next Thursday. I'll be out of town. So that's the 5th. We will not have a study on the 5th. We will have a study again on the 12th. We'll be back on the 12th. Okay. So thank you. Yes, so Martha and Mary is already uploaded on the YouTube channel, and it is on the Facebook pages if you want to go back through those. And hello, Pam. Hello, ladies. I can't see everyone who's on here. I wish I could say hello to everyone. I can't. I apologize, but I love seeing your names and your little logos on there anyway. So tonight is all about the Shunnamite woman, and God has some great things to show us through that. It's pretty exciting. I can tell you that she's pretty amazing. She is just a hero of the faith, in my opinion. And so I can't wait to get into some of those things. So before I do that, hello, Christine. Hello again. Good to see you. So why don't we go ahead and get started with prayer? Heavenly Father, I just come to you right now so very grateful, Father, for the opportunity, grateful for all of the ladies that can be on Facebook Live and having that opportunity, for all of the others, Father, that will see this video later. I just ask you to be with us, Father, as we study your word, as we study the women that were just heroes of the faith, that just did such great things, Father, that we can learn from. Father, I thank you for them. I thank you for each and every woman that you provided stories in the Bible, and the ones that you provide us in our day-to-day lives, Father, that we can learn and grow from as iron sharpens iron, that we can see these very, very real people who went through things in life that were much like the things that we go through today, and how they handled themselves, Father. I pray that your words shine through, that these ladies see you in this study. I pray, Father, that I handle accurately your word. I just thank you so much. It's such an honor and a privilege for this opportunity. So I just pray that this is all very pleasing to you. And I pray this all in your precious Son's name, Jesus. Amen. Okay, so we are going to be in 2 Kings chapter 4 and then a little bit in 2 Kings chapter 8. First, I just kind of want to give you a little bit of background. Hi, Terry. Hello, Jennifer. So good to see you all. I want to give you a little bit of background. We're really talking about 3 key players. Of course, the Shunnamite woman, which we'll talk about just a minute. Our other 2 key players in this story are, number 1, our prophet Elisha. Now, Elisha was Elijah's protege. And he was an amazing prophet. He started his ministry in about 850 BC. I think he started hanging out with Elijah some years before that, but he was kind of on his own then, starting in about 850 BC. So that's the time frame that we're in the Old Testament. And Elisha prophesied and did miracles, much like Elijah did. Some of my favorite miracles that Elijah did were the more extreme. They needed, all the effects and stuff like that. It would make a great movie with all the effects and stuff of some of the miracles that Elijah did. But Elisha's miracles, some of his were just more personal and one-on-one. And as we're going to see tonight, and just prior to this story, there was another one that he did that was just one-on-one, very personal, very intimate with people. And I love that about some of his miracles. So that's Elisha, the prophet. And the other player, kind of, secondary player in today's story is Gehazi, and that was Elisha's servant. He had also been Elijah's servant. He got to participate and be privy to a lot of these miracles. However, later on, he kind of proved himself to have an issue with greed, and so he ended up with a very sad end. He had leprosy, and there were some other things going on with him. So that's another story. Our main character today, though, is the Shunnamite woman. And it's so funny because as I'm doing this study, first of all, I wanted to tell you guys, it's interesting. I did a study many years ago on the Shunnamite woman, and I did a teaching on it, and I had notes, and I have notes from my past studies, and I had them printed, and I had them on a computer. I couldn't find them anywhere. It was like a little over a week ago when I wanted to start getting back into this one after I had studied Martha and Mary, and I couldn't find those notes anywhere. I can't find them in an email. I can't find the printed copies. I can't find them anywhere. And it occurred to me last Sunday, it's because God wanted me to see something new, and he wanted me to share something new. So I thought, okay, I get it. I'm not going to stress out that I can't find my notes. I'm starting over from scratch. That study was the one where I first fell in love with her. And so this study just made it that much more rich. And I got to learn a whole lot more. So anyway, I just wanted to share that with you. But one of the cool things about the Shunnamite woman is that she is not a who's who of the Bible. And the reason that I say that is because I have this book, and it's called Who's Who of the Bible. And guess what? She's not listed. I looked under Shunnamite, Shunnam, woman. I'm like, okay, are there different spellings? Am I spelling it wrong? She's not listed as an individual in the who's who of the Bible. She's listed in Elisha's story. She's listed in Gehazi's story. But because she's not named, she's not in here. And I love that. I think that's so cool, because you think there's a lot of people who are named in the Bible. But to just be known for your faith, to just be known for your character and not be named would be so cool, And I think that, I've said before, I think I said it about Esther when we were studying her. I probably said it about Mary. I want to be like her when I grow up. But, when I grow up and then I'm gone, if people don't remember my name or anything about me except the good things of my character, that would be more than enough. And I think that that's really cool about her. So she's not a who's who in the Bible. You won't find her in one of these study books. I have another one too. I have this other one. She wasn't in here either. So I just thought that was hysterical. So it made the study that much more interesting because there wasn't, a go-to story for her. So that was pretty neat. So that's our girl. And the way I'm kind of go through this is I'm gonna read directly from my Bible. I found that in this particular lighting, although I don't love it, I can see my Bible better, so that's really good. So I'll read through some of the verses. We are starting in 2 Kings chapter 4, verse 8. So we'll go through a section of verses at a time and then talk about those, okay? So here we go. 2 Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 8. So it says, "Now there came a time when Elisha passed over to Shunem, where there was a prominent woman, and she persuaded him to eat food. And it was, as often as he passed by, he turned in there to eat food. She said to her husband, 'Behold now, I perceive that this is a holy man of God, passing by us continually. Please let us make a little walled upper chamber, and let us set a bed for him there, and a table, and a chair, and a lampstand. And it shall be when he comes to us that he can turn in there.'" Okay. So that's the first part of our story. So here we have a prominent woman, and it doesn't say if she's prominent because she was well known or because she was wealthy. I think she was probably both, possibly both. It's a good thing for me. The previous miracle that Elisha did happened to be for a very poor, destitute woman, a woman who was a widow, and her children were about to be sold into slavery to pay off her debts. So then this story, this miracle that's about to come up, being of a wealthy, prominent woman, I think was notable. And so I believe that she was wealthy and well known in her community. And you're going to kind of see things, and I'm hoping at the end to have time to also read through maybe Proverbs 31, because you're going to see some characteristics in our Shunnamite woman that are kind of pulled right from that book. She's just got such great character and integrity and faith. So I'm hoping to be able to read that. And so this lady is that person. She was well known. She was likely wealthy, and she was able to do some things maybe that someone else wasn't able to do. So the first thing that she does is she persuades Elisha to eat food. I don't know about you, but some people it isn't very difficult to persuade them to eat food, especially if he's traveling. He's hungry, So she persuades him to eat food. And as he keeps coming by, Elisha was traveling from south of Shunem, from areas like Gilgal and Samaria, and up through Shunem, and then he would go to Mount Carmel, which was kind of like northeast, I think, of Shunem in that area. So this was a pass-through place for him when he was going from one area to another. So he was going by here often in his travels, in his ministry. So she sees him often, she persuades him to eat. And so as he's coming by and coming through, she perceives, so she's not only hospitable, right? But she's very discerning. She perceives that he's a man of God. I'm pretty sure Elisha, being who he was, didn't hide that fact. He was prophesying, things of that nature. So she says to her husband, I perceive that this is a man of God. Please let us make a room for him. She wanted to provide a place. She wanted to provide a safe haven for this man of God. And I think it's very cool to see that this woman, not only was she wealthy and well-known and hospitable, discerning, she's very respectful to her husband. She said, please, to him, asking him, can we do this? It seems like the financial means wasn't going to be an issue, but she went to him, even though he wasn't discerning this. He wasn't saying, let's invite this man in, let's do this. She went to her husband, because first of all, as a man that they're inviting to their home, it's probably expense and things like that. It sounds like this husband might not have even known, might not have even realized that this guy was coming back and coming through. But she was eager to point it out. And so obviously her husband said, yeah, we can do that. So she, gets a bed and a table. She decorates it, right? Just like we would. Many of us would be like, oh, well, it has to be just so. So she made sure he had a bed and a table and a lamp and a place that he could stay. It was a very consistent thing for him. It must have been very comforting for Elisha to know that at least in Shunem, he was going to have a place to lay down, a comfortable, safe haven for himself. So I thought that was really cool. And the thing that's so neat about it is her hospitality was not out of anything but a desire to do something for the man of God. It wasn't for what she could get from it. It wasn't for anything for herself, for her husband. It seems like they didn't really need anything. She just wanted to do it out of the goodness of her heart, out of her love for God and knowing that this was a man of God, perhaps. So I think that that's really neat. There are people out there. We are called to provide for our spiritual leaders. There's verses, 1 Timothy, what do I have? I think 1 Timothy in chapter 5 in Acts. There are verses that talk about caring for your spiritual leaders, for your pastors. Of course, giving to the church. That's definitely something that we are called to do, that we're commanded to do. But she did it out of a desire to do something for him and not receiving anything in return. There are a lot of people who give to the church. And, they might say to their pastor, well, when they have an idea or something that should be done or that should be changed or whatever, and, say to the pastor, well, don't you know how much I give? A smart pastor doesn't know. A smart pastor has no idea how much is given to the church by individuals, because then, they could perceive things differently than the way that they maybe should. Anyway, that's a whole different teaching. My point is, she wasn't asking for anything at all. It wasn't, well, I've made this upper room for you, so now you can do this for me. There was no other desire there but to do what was right and to be hospitable for him. So she prepared a place for the man of God, and nothing else mattered. The fact that she was wealthy, well-known, any of those things, nothing else mattered but that she had prepared a place for him. And, I think that we need to do that. I think that we do need to give, and we do need to care for and provide for our leaders, but we also need to, in ourselves and in our hearts and within our homes, prepare ourselves, prepare our families for the man of God. So that in and of itself, just in that first section, is a huge thing. Are we ready? We talked about last week about being ready, welcoming Jesus as Martha and Mary did. Have we prepared ourselves and prepared our hearts for Jesus, for the man of God? So that's just a little aside from that. So as we go on in our story, we're going to read real quick through verses 11 through 16 as the story kind of unfolds a little bit more. So starting in verse 11, again, we're in 2 Kings chapter 4, starting in verse 11. One day he, Elisha, came there and turned into the upper chamber and rested. Then he said to Gehazi, his servant, "Call this Shunammite." And when he had called her, she stood before him. He said to him, Elisha said to Gehazi, "Say now to her, behold, you have been careful for us with all this care. What can I do for you? Would you be spoken for to the king or to the captain of the army?" And she answered, "I live among my own people." So he said, "What then is to be done for her?" And Gehazi answered, "Truly, she has no son, and her husband is old." He said, "Call her." When he had called her, she stood in the doorway. Then he said, "At this season next year, you will embrace a son." And she said, "No, my lord, O man of God, do not lie to your maidservant." That was through 16. So here we have Elisha coming through. He's able to rest in the room, which again had to be so comforting for him, just knowing that he was going to have a place to lay his head when he got to Shunem. There he is, he's laying there and he's thinking, wow, we should do something for her. She's been so kind in allowing us to stay here and planning this out for us. So he calls to Gehazi. Gehazi calls our Shunammite girl, and she's standing in the doorway. That to me, and this is not in your text, but that to me shows that this was a very appropriate relationship. So another feather in the cap for our Shunammite girl. She was not at all in any way inappropriate in her relationship, her friendship with Elisha. She wasn't going upstairs and hanging out and having coffee in his room. She was removed from him. The room was there solely for him to go to on his own and rest, and he could essentially come and go as he pleased. But Elisha recognized that she had been so faithful in caring for him, he wanted to do something for her. So again, we see from her, now Gehazi speaks to her, they're kind of doing this conversation three-way, and Gehazi speaks to her to ask her, by Elisha, what is it that can we do for you? We can speak to the king, we can do these things. And she says, I live among my own people. She basically portrays that she's perfectly content. She doesn't need or desire anything. She doesn't need the security of the king. She doesn't need to be spoken for. She doesn't need financial assistance, it seems like. So she's basically saying, you know what? I'm good. I'm good, Elisha. I don't need anything. It's fine. You don't need to do anything for me. And it appears that she goes away. So when she does, Elisha then says to Gehazi, what? We got to do something. We've got to repay her for her kindnesses. What can be done? And to his credit, Gehazi recognizes that she's doesn't have any children. And her husband apparently is old. He's pretty blunt. Her husband's old, right? And in this time, back in the Old Testament, for a woman to be married to maybe an elderly man and she has no children, that could be a very precarious place. The world at that time was not kind to widows. She could, if she had debt, and in fact, the previous story was about a widow who had children, but she had debt, so things were being taken from her. And at that point, because she couldn't, work the land or whatever it was that she had, not only was that all being taken, but her children were about to be taken. So that was the life of a widow. If you didn't have sons who could take care of you and your husband died, you were left to probably struggle the rest of your life. So Gehazi says, he's older, she doesn't have any children. So that's when Elisha calls to her and says to her, at this time next year, you're going to have a child. And her response is so pain-filled to me. She's in utter disbelief that he would even say those words. She just says, oh no, my Lord, do not deceive me. One of the translations, I think mine says, do not lie to me. But one of the translations says, do not deceive me. And it's almost, there's a couple things going on here. I mean, first of all, it seems like she didn't ever want to get her hopes up. Like our Shunnamite girl has resigned herself to the fact that she wasn't going to have kids, But she's looking at her blessings. She's content with what she has. She has a husband. She has wealth. She knows people. She knows the man of God. She was able to provide this. She's good. She was not even going to utter the words, well, I'd kind of like to have a baby. I'd like to have a child or a son, She wasn't even going to entertain that thought with him. And so when he says it, she's just in disbelief and oh no. And it's as if, and I did hear that one translation of it or interpretation of it by her to say, do not deceive me. It's as if she's saying, don't say this unless this is absolutely 100% from God. Don't tease me, don't toy with me, unless this is going to be fulfilled and it's 100% from God. She didn't even want to go there in her head or in her heart. That's kind of the interpretation that I was learning about this week. So she says that and she's just like, I can't handle the idea of that unless it's straight from God and it's absolutely 100% true. Because she didn't want to set herself up for disappointment, right? And, I don't know about you, but there are times when we either we don't think we're worthy of a particular blessing, so we don't even want to ask for it. If we think it's just too much for God, so we don't want to ask for it because we don't want to feel like we're being too needy or too, pushy or whatever it might be. Maybe we feel like we don't deserve it. Like I said, unworthy. Sometimes it's the idea, like in a situation like this, if you go back to the curse of Eve, back to Genesis and our lovely sister Eve, we learned that there is a curse and that it tells us that through childbirth, we're going to have pain. And with sorrow, we're going to bring forth children. So maybe it was an idea of she knew that once she did have a child, that there was a whole new set of things that you could have to go through, and a whole new set of things that you could potentially lose. So, that could have been playing into it. If you have children, especially adult children at this point, if you've given birth, you know that there's pain in childbirth. But if you have children, perhaps, as children or as adults, perhaps you have felt that sorrow that comes with having children. And, even myself, I have not had a situation where I've lost a child after a live birth, but I did lose a child in miscarriage. And that in and of itself is such a pain and such a heartbreak that, and I do know a couple of individuals fairly close to us that had lost a child after birth at different ages. So to consider that I might be given this blessing and then have it taken away is also might have been playing into her, oh no, my Lord, unless this is directly from God, don't even toy with me. Don't even utter those words because I can't bear it. I don't know about you, but that's the pain that I feel from her in those words. And it's a beautiful and precious look at her heart and where she was, because, outwardly she was like, no, I'm good. I'm good. I'm content. I live among my own people. We're good. You just enjoy your room and I'm going to go cook you some dinner. But she did have a true desire in her heart that Elisha, through Gehazi and talking about that, was able to touch on. And then, as we're going to see, was able to follow through with. So then we have, let me see. I just don't want to, I do have some notes. I didn't want to rely fully on my notes, but I do have some notes because there's some things that I don't want to miss. Okay. I did have a verse that I wanted to go through. See, I'm glad I looked back at my notes. And that verse, when we are thinking of those things, that perhaps there's something that we do have a desire for, but either because we just don't know if we should ask God, or we don't know if we're worthy, or think that we are not worthy. There's a verse that I love, and it's in Ephesians 3, and it's verses 20 through 21. And it says, now to him who is able to do far more abundantly than all that we ask or think, according to the power at work within us, to him be glory. And it goes on to say in the church and things like that. But I just love that, because we have to remember that God is so able to do things far more abundantly than we can ever imagine. And we can go to him with those deepest desires of our heart and pour them out to him. And he's a good father. In fact, we've got a comment down there. He is indeed a good father. And he wants to bless us with those things. Some things that we feel like we do want. And then he also blesses us with things that we would have never imagined, or like our Shunnamite girl would have never even asked for. So, okay. Going on, we're going to start now in verse 18 and go through 25a. So just the first portion of that next verse. But I don't want to pass over verse 17. Very big verse, because then the woman conceived and bore a son at the season the next year, as Elisha had said to her. So she had perceived that he was a man of God. She was faithful to caring for him. Because of her love for God and her desire to do what was right for the man of God. And just as the man of God said, she conceived and bore a son. So going on, starting in verse 18. When the child was grown, the day came that he went out to his father to the reapers. He said to his father, my head, my head. And the father said to his servant, carry him to his mother. When he had taken him and brought him to his mother, he sat on her lap until noon and then died. She went up and laid him on the bed of the man of God and shut the door behind him and went out. Then she called to her husband and said, "Please send me one of the servants and one of the donkeys that I may run to the man of God and return." He said, "Why will you go to him today? It is neither the new moon nor the Sabbath." And she said, "It will be well." Then she saddled a donkey and said to her servant, "Drive and go forward. Do not slow down the pace. Do not slow down the pace for me unless I tell you." So she went and came to the man of God to Mount Carmel. Okay, sorry about the little blurbs there. I was missing my words. So, here we are. She has her son. She has nursed him and weaned him and cared for him and loved on him and poured into him for these years. He's been growing. He's old enough now to go out to the harvest, to go out to the reapers with his dad. So I don't know exactly how old he is, but he's weaned and able to go do that. So he's out there and he stops and he says to his dad, "My head, my head." So, and if you've studied it, you've heard that they say, the commentators say either it was some type of heat stroke, dehydration, maybe he wasn't used to being out there because he was still so young. Perhaps it was some type of aneurysm. We don't know exactly, but whatever it was a very, very serious episode. And so he goes to his dad and, he's crying about his head hurting. And his dad, which, his dad's out at work. There's not a lot he can do. And like a lot of dads, he points to his servant. He says, "Take him to his mom. Mom's going to know what to do." And dad was busy at work. So the servant takes him to his mom. And it's probably about 9 a.m. at this time, given the times of day, and perhaps about 9 a.m. I don't want to say probably, but then servant takes him to his mom, and his mom holds him in her lap. And then about 3 hours later, he dies in her arms. I cannot imagine the pain and just unimaginable heartbreak that she was feeling at that time. So at this point, this is where I look in this story where she just begins to become this absolute hero of faith. It's like we talked about at the beginning. She was hospitable and she was discerning. She was very respectful of her husband. She was knowledgeable. She was all of these great things. But now we are getting into where she is just this champion. Because at this point, normally, if you have a child or a loved one who dies, the next step is they go to the tomb. There was, a procedure that they would follow with anointing the body with fragrant oils and wrapping the body and then putting them in the tomb and closing the tomb. And then you grieve, right? That's what happens with death. And our girl, the Shunnamite girl, she's holding her boy and he dies in her arms. And she's got to have just all kinds of emotions going all over the place. But she picks up her child and she takes him directly to the bed of the man of God. And how hard it had to be to let go of him and then close the door and walk away. I can't even imagine. But as we're going to find in the remainder of the story, the faith that it took to do what she was about to do was absolutely huge. And when I thought about this week, I thought it's so true that it takes so much more faith to fight for something than it does strength to let it go, right? It's much easier to just let something go. And I think of times like when we're having difficulties in relationships, like in a marriage. Sometimes, and this is not with every marriage, even my own husband, has been through a divorce, and I know that there are things happen, and so I'm talking about in generalities, not specific situations here, but sometimes in marriage it would be much easier to walk away. This marriage is dead. I'm just going to walk away from it and move on. Sometimes it's easier to do that than it is to just fight for it. I was given this. This marriage was a gift from God, and I'm going to fight for it. When you have adult children, maybe that have walked away from God, it's much easier to just throw your hands up and be like, okay, you know what? I tried. It's much easier to just let them go than it is to fight for it. Not that we have a lot of power with those types of situations, but not letting go and just having the faith and the trust in God to continue to pursue it as He leads us, that is much more difficult. And the faith and the strength that it took this mom to do what she was about to do is unbelievable to me. So she takes him upstairs, shuts the door. She goes out to her husband, and she says to him, you know, she's going to need a servant and a donkey so that she can go to the man of God. And, you know, he's like, why would you go see the man of God? It's neither the new moon nor the Sabbath. And so you kind of tell that she has this relationship with God that is very personal. But the husband, he's more like, it's formal. You know, it's very regimented. These are the times when you go to the man of God. These are the times when you would go to the temple, or this is what you do. It's not any of those times, so why would you go see him? And he's kind of asking her, like, what's up? Why would you do this? And she stops and she says some amazing words. She just looks at her husband and she says, it will be well. And so he gives her the donkey and the servant, and she saddles up the donkey, it says, and she rides off. I don't know about you, but me, especially when my children were little, my husband would be at work and something would happen at home, and I was home at the time. I was a stay-at-home mom, and I would be on the phone with my husband because this situation happened at home, and I'm like, I'm freaking out, and I've got, 5 kids at one time at home, and I'm like, I can't handle it, or I'd be emotional or whatever it was, and I would be calling my husband. Doesn't matter that he's at work or was in a meeting or whatever it was. I'm on the phone with him, and I've got him saying to me, okay, this isn't an emotional issue, Kathy. He would tell me sometimes. I laugh now, but I think my husband had to say that to me a lot. Or he would kind of explain it, or he would just let me vent, and then he'd say, okay, you think it's gonna be okay. I'll be home at such and such time, whatever. But not this girl. She just goes to her husband and she says, this is what I need to do. Can I have a servant and a donkey? And she just assures him it will be well. Her child has just died. And she's like, no, it'll be well because I'm going to see the man of God. And she was going to go directly to him. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. She was going straight to the man of God. I absolutely love that. Okay, I don't want to lose my place. So she says, don't worry, I got this. And she heads on her way. She tells the servant, and, they get on the donkey, and she tells the servant, go and do not slow down for me. We've got to get there. Now, this was going to be a few hours. I think they say it was probably like a 3-hour ride on a donkey. I may be wrong with that. If anyone knows differently, please correct me. But it would have been a 3-hour ride, moving very quickly on this animal. So she's going straight to Mount Carmel. Now, mind you, in this day and age for me, looking at this is what I see. She didn't text her friends to say, oh, could you pray for me, kind of drawing them into this, which I do. I get on the phone and I'm texting my friends, oh, I need prayer for da, da, da. And then I have to stop and think, have I even prayed for this yet myself? Or am I just, telling people about it? So she didn't stop and text her friends. She didn't post it on Facebook. She didn't call her mom. She didn't do any of the things that I think I would do at this time, when this crisis situation has come up. She gets on there and she rides 3 hours or more to Mount Carmel on a donkey. And I cannot even imagine what was going through her mind for 3 hours as she's left her child back in Shunem. But she does it. And she gets there. She goes straight to the man of God. And I think I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's go ahead and read on a little bit. I'm going to go through 25B. So it starts in the next little section there through 28. Okay, so we're still in 2 Kings chapter 4. When the man of God saw her at a distance, he said to Gehazi his servant, "Behold, there is the Shunammite. Please run now to meet her and say to her, 'Is it well with you? Is it well with your husband? Is it well with the child?' And she answered, 'It is well.' When she came to the man of God, to the hill, she caught hold of his feet. And Gehazi came near to push her away, but the man of God said, 'Let her alone, for her soul is troubled within her, and the Lord has hidden it from me and has not told me.' Then she said, Did I ask for a son from my Lord? Did I not say, 'Do not deceive me'?" So here we are. She gets there. She's riding up to Shunem. She's on the donkey. Elisha sees her from a distance. And Elisha has, at this point, no idea what is going on because God hasn't revealed it to him. And he's surprised. Can you imagine having that type of relationship with God that you're surprised that God has not revealed to you what's going on in this situation? Like you're in such close communication that something happens and you're going, wait a minute, God hasn't even told me what's going on here yet. That's just cool in and of itself. I mean, being a prophet comes with such huge responsibilities. I can't even imagine the responsibilities, but just to consider having that type of relationship with God, that you're surprised that God has not yet revealed to you what's going on. So he sends Gehazi out and, he wants Gehazi to find out, ask her, is it well? What's going on? Is it your husband? Is it your son? Why are you coming to me? It's not the new moon or Sabbath, right? And she's coming to him. Why are you coming here? So Gehazi gets to her and, he asks her, what's going on? And she just says to Gehazi, it is well. And I want to back up a little bit because as I was talking about that, I don't want to lose sight of the fact that, of course, we stop in these situations and we pray to Jesus. Jesus is our intercessor, right? Jesus is the one that we go to because he came down to earth, because he died on the cross. He is that bridge between us and God. But at that time, in the Old Testament, during these times, they didn't have that. They couldn't talk directly to God. So Elisha was the man of God, right? Not Gehazi. Elisha was the man of God. Elisha was the one through whom God gave her this miracle. And so Elisha was essentially her intercessor at that time. He was the one that she could go to. He was the one between her and God. So that's why at this point she goes to Elisha like we would go to Jesus in prayer. And I love this scene. It's reminiscent a little bit of our girl Mary from last week, just going to the feet of Jesus, right? When she was learning from him, but then also after Lazarus died, how she just fell to his feet, the difference in the demeanor between her and Martha. She said the very same words, but she fell at his feet when she said those words. That is where our Shunammite girl is at this point in time. So I don't want to lose my spot again. Okay. So when Elisha had seen her, he was stirred within himself. I mean, he was a little bit distressed. almost in his words when he said, find out what's going on. And again, she said, it is well to Gehazi. But then when she comes to Elisha and he's looking at her and thinking, I don't know what's going on. And she drops to her knees and grabs onto his feet. There's such an intimacy there, a relationship, and an appropriate intimacy with him because he's the man of God. And she's like, did I ask for a son? Did I not say, don't deceive me? Or she's saying, did I not say, if this was not from God, don't even toy with me. Don't even tease me about this. And you've given me this son and now he would die? She can't even imagine it. And she just falls in such submission to the man of God, just like Mary did with Jesus, just in such utter heartbreak and turmoil, and such an idea of the precious relationship that she felt with God there. So Elisha was stirred, and he goes to her, and he is so surprised that he doesn't already know what's going on. So at this point, she just pours out her heart. And it's not surprising. I don't think she really lost her faith at this point as much as it reminds me of, when children, maybe they're at school, they've been at school all day, and something happened in like fourth period with a friend, or something happened at school, or they got yelled at by a teacher, something that affected them. But for whatever reason, because their friends were around, or because they didn't want to lose their composure at school in front of people, they just kept it cool all day long. But then when they get home to their parent, they just fall apart. I don't know if you have children, if they've ever been in that situation. And they just, once they get to their parent or someone that they know cares for them like that, they just break down and fall apart. For me, it's been times with my husband. I've been able to hold my own strength, to just kind of call on God to keep me strong for situations, even when I'm being strong for a friend in a particular situation. And then I get home to my husband, and as soon as I get home to him, I'm a blubbering mess. Like, I just have to let it go and let it out, because he's my confidant. He's the close one that can help me through that, right? I feel that with our Shunnamite girl, that she had to keep composure with her husband. He couldn't have helped her at that time, right? He was working. He had a job to do. He could not have helped her at that time. It wasn't Gehazi. It wasn't anybody along the way. She didn't want the servant to stop at all. Don't stop for anything until she got to the man of God. And then she finally just lost it. She fell apart and she poured out her heart to him. Did I even ask for a son? Did I not say, if this isn't from God, don't even go there with me? And then Elisha knew, obviously, what had happened. She explained what happened. He cared for her. She had been so faithful with him. So he sends Gehazi. He sends Gehazi with his staff, and he has performed miracles with this staff. So he sends Gehazi up ahead. And he tells Gehazi what to do with the staff. I think I'm getting ahead of myself. Yep, I'm getting ahead of myself. So I'm going to stop there. Let me read the verses, and then I'll go back into that portion. Okay? All right, here we go. So starting in verse 29. Oh, getting close. I'm right in your face there. Starting in verse 29. Then he said to Gehazi, gird up your loins and take my staff in your hand and go your way. If you meet any man, do not salute him. And if anyone salutes you, do not answer him, and lay my staff on the lad's face. The mother of the lad said, as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, I will not leave you. And he arose and followed her. Then Gehazi passed on before them and laid the staff on the lad's face, but there was no sound or response. So he returned to meet him and told him, the lad has not awakened. So at this point, here's where he tells Gehazi, you go, you take my staff, run, get there. Not entirely sure of the reasoning for that. maybe he didn't think he could get there as quickly. Maybe he wasn't planning on going. Maybe he was just going to send Gehazi with his staff. But our woman from Shunem looks at Elisha and she says, I am not leaving your side. You are the man of God, and I am staying with you. So Elisha then goes with her to the home in Shunem. So Gehazi gets there first, and he lays the staff on him as Elisha has told him. He's seen miracles before, so maybe this is going to work. He lays the staff on him, and nothing. No miracle. The child is dead. And so he comes out, and part of me feels like this section was not only for maybe the other people later on to see and to learn that the power, the magic and the miracles, I should say not magic, was not in the staff. The power was from God, and it was only Elisha could perform these miracles with that power. So it wasn't in the staff, it wasn't in anything else. The power came directly from God through the man of God, through the prophet of God. And that's what we're about to see. But I think it was also important for Gehazi to see that he couldn't perform the miracles. He was the servant, but he was not going to be the one that could actually perform them because the power was not there through him or through the staff. That's just me talking. That's not the text. Okay. So, next set of verses, starting now in verse 32. There we go again. When Elisha came into the house, behold, the lad was dead and laid on his bed. So he entered and shut the door behind them both and prayed to the Lord. And he went up and lay on the child and put his mouth on his mouth and his eyes on his eyes and his hand on his hands. And he stretched himself on him, and the flesh of the child became warm. Then he returned and walked in the house once back and forth and went up and stretched himself on him. And the lad sneezed 7 times, and the lad opened his eyes. He called Gehazi and said, Call this Shunammite. So he called her. And when she came in to him, he said, Take up your son. Then she went in and fell at his feet and bowed herself to the ground. And she took up her son and went out. Okay. So here we have Elisha comes in. Gehazi has basically said, yep, he's dead. He didn't come back to life. It's hopeless. I laid the staff on his face just like you told me to, Elisha, and nothing. So Elisha goes into the room, and here's the man of God. And the first thing he did was he prayed. I love that. You know, when we look at Jesus, when we talk about prayer, when we look at the importance of prayer and the fact that Jesus himself prayed to God, he was God. He was God in the flesh, but he prayed to God. And here we are, this man of God who has already performed miracles, who has already prophesied and traveled these regions to share the fact that God was the one true holy God, the God of Israel. But he stopped and prayed. The power wasn't in the staff. The power wasn't anywhere else, but directly from God. And Elisha knew that he needed that power in order to resurrect this boy, right? So the man of God prayed. So then after he prayed, it wasn't just a magical, boom, the boy arises. He got on top of him, and it shows that this miracle was very personal and very intimate, and it was one that was showing just a very close relationship. And so Elijah does these things, and then he gets up and he walks around. It's almost as if he was maybe more vested in this miracle than others because of his relationship with this family. So he walks around, he's praying, and then he approaches the boy one more time, and then the boy wakes up, his eyes open, his skin warms, and he sneezes 7 times, which also is pretty great because 7 is that number of perfection. And, clearly he had been dead now for, at the very least, like 6 hours between the time that it took her to get to Mount Carmel, talk to them, and the time that it took them to get back. It was likely much more than that. And so he sneezes 7 times, like to get, revived. I don't know. And then there might medically be an explanation for that. I don't know what it is. I haven't looked that in depth into it. But then, once again, our girl shows us such a great trait that she has, because when Elisha says, go get your son, there he is, take him up, what does she do? I think I would want to just run in that room and grab my boy and be like, oh my gosh, you're alive, you're alive. And she doesn't. She drops again to Elisha's feet just to pray, to show submission, but to praise him. She bowed down. She was bowing down to God, not to a man, but to the man of God. She was at his feet again, praising him, thanking him for giving her back her son. Then she went in and took up her son. I can't imagine it, but the faith and the trust that she had in doing what she did to save her son was absolutely beautiful. Again, like I said, with that verse before from Mark, yes, I believe, help my unbelief. Those are 2 things that I pray all the time for. Help my unbelief. I do believe. Help me believe. I do trust. Help me trust. I have faith. Help me have faith. In these types of situations, this Shunnamite woman, I hope you're seeing, I hope you're falling in love with her as much as I have. But she's just so amazing in every single aspect that we've looked at. And now it's not completely done. We still have a few more verses to go through, because the story continues just a little bit. Let me check the time. We're getting close on time. So let me read through these last verses so that I don't keep you over an hour. We are going to jump to now, after our amazing, huge miracle, that I don't want to be anticlimactic. That's the huge part of the story, and the Shunammite's faith. But I want to jump over real quick to 2 Kings chapter 8, because there is a continuation of our story. Chapter 8, verses 1 through 6. Okay, I don't know if you can get there, but I'm going to go ahead and start reading it. 2 Kings chapter 8, verses 1 through 6. Now Elisha spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go with your household and sojourn wherever you can sojourn, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will even come on the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and did according to the word of the man of God. And she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. At the end of 7 years, the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went out to appeal to the king for her house and for her field. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, Please relate to me all of the great things that Elisha has done. As he was relating to the king how he had restored to life the one who was dead, behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life appealed to the king for her house and for her field. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman, and this is her son, whom Elisha restored to life. When the king asked the woman, she related it to him. So the king appointed her for a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers and all the produce of the field, from the day that she left the land until even now. Okay, so here we go. The story wasn't over. She got her miracle. She got her son back. But because of her great faith in God and her relationship with Elisha, he comes to her and he warns her there's going to be a famine. Now it appears at this time that did come to fruition. It doesn't appear that her husband is in the story any longer. So it appears that she did lose her husband. She's a widow at this point, but she has her son. So because of her relationship with Elisha and all that she had done, he warns her, there's going to be a famine. You need to leave Shunem, you need to leave this area and sojourn in another area where you're going to be able to have food and be cared for. And so she does. And at the end of that 7 years, I love these stories. It's kind of like when, our stories in Esther and different stories, there's no coincidences in the Bible. So it's the end of 7 years. She and her son come back. She has left her land. And now during this time, it was perfectly okay and appropriate and for the king or for the government to take over any land that was left behind. They could take it over. It was all theirs. The prophet was theirs. They could own it, do whatever they wanted with it. So she now, at the end of 7 years, has to go to the king and appeal to him and petition to receive her land back, which was doubly difficult because she's a widow. Her husband isn't in the scene, apparently. It's just her and her child. But coincidentally, Gehazi is there talking to the king because the king happened to ask, tell me all the great stories of Elisha. So Gehazi just happens to be telling him about the story of raising this woman's child from the dead, restoring him to life, and she walks in right then to petition him. And Gehazi's like, oh my gosh, there she is. That's the girl. Holy cow, look at that. And so the king looks at her and he says, relay the story. Is it true? And she relays it just as Gehazi said. And so he tells his officer, give her everything that was hers, including basically the profit that has come from the land for the 7 years that she was gone. So not only does she get everything that she left, but anything that was produced from it while she was gone, she was also able to get. So she was doubly blessed because of her faith, her relationship with the man of God, her character, just her trustworthiness in who she was. There is so much to be said for that, just that trust, right? In our relationships with God. If we had the faith of a mustard seed, God says, we would be able to do so many great things, but do we even have that little faith? The faith that she had to lay her child down, to not fall apart, to not just do the easy thing and put him in the tomb and go grieve, but to go to the man of God and say, I didn't ask for this child, and I begged you not to deceive me. I begged you to only do it if it was from God. So she had enough faith to say, if God gave me this blessing, I'm not going to let it go without a fight, right? So there we have our Shunammite girl. I hope I didn't go through that all too fast. Seems like it might be a little bit fast going through these just one at a time. But I love her. I hope that you are able to see so many things in her, but just a list. I would implore you to go through Proverbs 31 because I don't want to keep you where it's already 8:01 now. I don't want to keep you longer, but your challenge this week is to go through Proverbs 31. A lot of people think that the Proverbs 31 woman is a conglomeration of women, like it couldn't possibly be one woman. But if you go through that, I believe that you will see so many of the characteristics that we see right here in this one woman. And even if it isn't, all of these characteristics that the Shunammite woman has, that she possessed and that she portrayed, they're all things to emulate, to strive toward. We're all on a path, right? We're not there yet. That's why I always say when I grow up, I want to be like this one or this one. 1 week I'm working on respect for my husband. 1 week I'm working on faith, or 1 day or 1 minute, however it goes. I'm working on these things. Hopefully I'm working toward these things. Many times I fail at them, but I'm working toward being better. I'm working toward being more like Jesus and being more like like the Shunammite. Like I say, for me, she's a hero of faith. I'm working toward that. Each of us are. So it's not wrong, even if we think that that Proverbs 31 woman is a conglomeration of women, it's not wrong to try to be like all of them. In fact, consistently trying to be is what we're called to do. So I pray that you got a lot out of this study. I'm going to go through and read Proverbs, and maybe I'll kind of go through and list those things as well. I will upload this study to the YouTube channel as well, and then link them. If you didn't get to see the Martha and Mary study, as I said at the beginning, it is uploaded now. In fact, on the Shaken and Shinin' page, I posted it right before this video. So you can go to the Shaken and Shinin' page and find that. And I believe that these videos will also be uploaded on the church website, Calvary Christian Fellowship of Tucson, so that they can be accessed there as well for anyone who's not on Facebook. I know that a lot of people, just because of the things that are going on in our world right now, have kind of gotten off Facebook and social media, and I do not blame anyone who does so. So there are other ways to watch these videos as well if you like them. And again, if you have any questions or comments, put them there in the comments, private message me. Any other way that you can reach me would be great. And I'm just going to go ahead and close with prayer. Heavenly Father, thank you so much. Thank you for this study, Father. I thank you for this Shunnamite woman, this unnamed woman who is not a who's who in the Bible, at least as far as some of the books and resources go, but she's a who's who for me, Father. I thank you for her example. I thank you that we can take the things that she went through and learn from them and apply them in our own lives, Father. I pray that we can look to the characteristics that she possessed, the very characteristics that are listed in the Proverbs 31 woman, Father, and strive to be more like that daily. I know, Father, that we can only do that through you with your help. I thank you for the opportunities that you provide us to do better. I am so sorry, Father, for the times that I fail. And I thank you for your grace to each day try and try again. I thank you for this time, for these opportunities, and for these ladies who have listened to your word tonight, Father. I pray that they hear and heard exactly what you wanted them to. And I pray this all in your Son, Jesus' name. Amen. All right. Okay. Thank you so much, you guys. I love you. And more importantly, God loves you. I can't wait till next time. Oh, once again, we will not be here next Thursday live. We will not be live on Thursday, November the 5th. I'll be away. So we will be back live on Thursday, November the 12th. Also, we do have an in-person Bible study starting. It actually starts tomorrow morning. We are also going to be going through the Women of the Bible, and that's going to be in the northwest side, kind of Marana area. If you want more information about that, you can comment or private message me. That starts tomorrow. We're going to start with Martha and Mary, and it's going to be more question and answer, more discussion. It is in person. So there's, a lot going on with that. So you can private message me any questions that you have about that as well. All right. Thank you so much. And I will see you back here live on Thursday, November 12th. All right. Everybody have a great week. We'll see you soon.